I can be whatever I want to be.
All right, guys. So here begins probably one of the most ludicrous ideas I've ever had to do, and that is to do the entire Lunar Chronicles series in a week. I know I've already done Harry Potter, and I guess I'm sort of ahead with all of my other reviews, but I decided, because I love my birthday, I want to do all the books that I love. Well, not all the books. That would take a long time. But in honor of my birthday, like with Christmas, with December, I just want to do books that I love. And I had not read the Lunar Chronicles in a while, and I had recently seen someone post about them and whether or not they were recommended. I was like, sure, you should totally read them. They're amazing. And then I said to myself, Beth, when was the last time you read the Lunar Chronicles? Because things can change. Tastes can change. So I decided to reread them again, and even though I've only gotten through Cinder so far, I did schedule them for the first week of February. So basically from Friday until Thursday, you're going to get the Lunar Chronicles. So the 4th through the 10th. I hope you tune in and enjoy them. I know that the Lunar Chronicles has gotten an upgrade with its cover art. And for me, I don't like it as much. It's not as pretty. It does not entice me as much. It feels very juvenile, which is fine. If you like anime and you like cartoon animations, then you are perfectly fine with the new cover art for the Lunar Chronicles. It is beautiful in its own way, but I feel like this is very timeless, and so I'm very, very happy to finally get to pull out these books and display them for everyone to see. Did I actually read it? So have I ever actually cracked open one of these books? No. So how about we do that, okay? Whoa. That first spine crack, you know what I'm saying? Which reminds me, I do have another copy of Cinder. It is paperback. I might have actually opened this one up, but I feel like I need to do a giveaway because I feel bad having it collect dust on my shelf, because why am I going to keep this one when I have a hardback? You know what I'm saying? So yes, if you want to go into the drawing for this book, comment down below. Tell me what your favorite retelling is, or of the series, which is your favorite book. I think they're all equally fantastic. Although I say that before I've finished the entire series. So far, I'm not going to tell you which book I'm on because that's embarrassing. Although technically, I still have 3 weeks. And I'm done with the month of January. And I'm done actually with the month of February. I just have to, I have one book to edit, or one review to edit, and then I have all of these books to read and then review / record and edit. So I'm ahead, but I'm behind. But what I'm most excited about is Gilded, because I've never read Gilded. I've listened / read all of the Lunar Chronicles series, and so I'm excited to see what she has in store for me. But anyways, let's get into the book. Let me stop jabber-jawing and talk about what you actually want to hear. Cinder. If you know nothing about the Lunar Chronicles, it is a fairy tale retelling set in the future. And I enjoyed that take on it. I enjoyed how, yes, it's a retelling and you can tell it's a retelling, but Marissa Meyer wasn't trying to be incredibly literal. I enjoyed the way that she took the elements that we knew, the important elements, and incorporated them so that the story made sense, but still it wasn't like she was trying to recreate the wheel. And in Cinder, if you cannot tell, this one is based off of Cinderella. And the main character is who? Cinder? How many more times can I say Cinder? Yes, the main character is a teenage girl named Cinder, and she is a cyborg. She lives, as I said, in the future, and it's like the new Shanghai, Which, before I get into the rest of my synopsis, I have to say that is the one element I thought Meyer dropped the ball on, because there is this heavy emphasis on the Asian culture of it all, yet she failed to incorporate it in a way that was satisfactory towards how much emphasis she put on it. That is really neither here nor there. It has no bearing on the plot and the enjoyability, but for me, that is something, even from the very beginning, my first read, it stuck out like a sore thumb, because I was like, okay, obviously these characters are Asian, but what does that have to do with anything? How is that gonna color the novel? How is that going to play into the setting? And it doesn't. But anyways, Cinder is a cyborg, and she lives with Lynn Audrey, and then she has two stepsisters. Pearl and Peony, and so I guess not really stepsisters in a sense, because she wasn't actually adopted. As a cyborg, her dad, her whoever you want to call him, he went on a business trip and he came back with this girl, and then he died because the whole country, or actually like basically the whole world, has begun suffering from this disease called leishmaniasis, and which is funny. It's kind of ironic or apropos considering all the stuff that we've been going through with COVID. But he brings her back. It's New Beijing, not Shanghai, New Beijing, and he comes down with leishmaniasis and he dies, leaving Cinder with these people he doesn't know. There's a good bit of animosity between herself and Pearl, but she and Peony are extremely close. And so, obviously, Audrey doesn't like her. And she has been turned into their slave. She is the person who makes all the money for them. She does that by working as a mechanic in the local town square. Of course, there's this huge lipstick on the fingers, and I still didn't get the hair. There's this huge prejudice against cyborgs, and so we immediately get to see another shopkeeper telling her kid, get away from Cinder. And then the next thing you know, that this woman, she's showing a spot and she has stage 2 leishmaniasis, and she's taken away, her shop is burned, and everybody scrambles. Cinder gets home and she sees her sisters and her stepmother, her guardian is more like it, trying on dresses for the annual ball, for the royal ball. And she's like, can I come? And Audrey's like, oh sure, if you do this and you do this and you do this. However, I don't have money for this and this. So if you want to have a dress, you need to figure out how to get us some money. So Cinder goes to the junkyard looking for a belt for their hovercraft, essentially. And she is accompanied by Peony, as well as her robot Aiko. And, you know, Aiko is also just a fun little character because she has a personality chip unlike any other. And so they're at the junkyard and they stumble across an old-fashioned car. So basically stuff that we drive. And if you're picking up on things, this car is going to be her pumpkin. Largely we figure that out because it's compared to the color of a pumpkin. However, while they are at the junkyard, Peony shows signs of leishmaniasis, and they call emergency. Emergency comes and gets them. Cinder, of course, is thinking, did I give it to her because I encountered this woman at the market? However, when she's tested, she tests negative. She doesn't have it. But she gets home and Audrey is furious. She blames Cinder for everything, of course. And then we go from there. However, one thing I've left out is that Cinder had met Prince Kai that morning at the market because he had his android that he needed her to repair, and you get the impression something is extremely important about this android. Naturally, she forgets all about it in the wake of what's happening with Peony, but then Audrey is so angry with her that she volunteers her for the cyborg draft, which means there's this draft going on in which cyborgs are guinea pigs to figure out how to eradicate letumosis. Cinder gets to the laboratory and is infused with letumosis, only for her scans to show that her immune system is attacking and getting rid of the letumosis strands. And so here are some spoilers. What we learn is that this draft is actually a ruse to find Cinder. And the main antagonist of the series is this woman named Queen Levana, who rules the moon, who rules Luna. And all of the Lunars are kind of the arch enemies of everybody on Earth. However, there have been Lunars coming to Earth, and they're not allowed to do that, but they come to Earth, and they are the ones who are spreading letumosis. They are immune to it, but that doesn't mean that they can't be carriers and spread it. And so the thing with Queen Levana is that once upon a time, her sister, Queen Channery, ruled Luna, and she was even more ruthless than Queen Levana is. And it's rumored that Levana killed Channery, and she also killed her niece, Celine. If you see where I'm going with this, you will know that Cinder is Princess Celine. She escaped the fire somehow and was secreted off of Luna, brought to Earth, but her injuries meant that she had to be turned into a cyborg. So I thought that was really, really interesting how she's an incredibly important person in the grand scope of things, yet she is one of the most detested people, races, known to man at this point. Queen Levana has decided to come to Earth because she essentially just wants to rule everything, and she wants to marry Prince Kai so she can be the Empress and rule Earth as well as the moon. However, somehow she spots Cinder in the crowd, and she's like, I don't know if she necessarily knew who Cinder was, because another trait of the Lunas or the Lunars is that they can cast something called a glamour, which means they can manipulate the bioelectricity of your body. And so, where was I going with that? Right, the thing about the Lunars and the glamours is somehow Cinder's is extremely similar to Channery's, and up to the point where she was volunteered for the cyborg draft. Well, obviously she didn't know she was Lunar, and she didn't know she was Princess Celine, but she when the surgery had been performed on her to turn her into a cyborg, whoever it was that did it implanted a chip in her that dampened her ability to cast a glamour. So she didn't know she could do it until she's drafted, and then Dr. Erland, the guy in charge, who's also a Lunar, although he's been hiding it his entire life, which goes into something else that I may or may not remember to go over, he somehow is able to turn off or disengage this dampening chip. And so, okay, now we're getting to the end where we're having the ball, and Cinder has discovered kind of the underlying reason, like the full extent of Queen Levana's plans, and she's trying to warn Kai. She gets to the ball, she's looking a hot mess, and things happen, and she tries to get Cinder to shoot herself, because that's one of the things that Lunars can do. They can manipulate other people into feeling, into doing. I think at some point Cinder casts a glamour for the first time, and it's very obvious to those who know what to look for that she is Princess Celine. And now Queen Levana does want her dead, and she gives Kai an ultimatum, because Kai is now the emperor, because at the beginning of the book his dad had Letimosis, and then he dies by the middle of the book. So now, yes, Kai is in charge, and he's trying to figure out what's the best thing to do for his people. He initially was going to agree to marry Queen Lavanna, and then Cinder sort of talks him out of it. Things happen. And when we're at this ballroom scene, it's like, what should he do? And Queen Lavanna gives him an ultimatum, and she's like, okay, well, you can either marry me or you can imprison Cinder, and, you know, essentially she'll be executed. So he chooses to imprison Cinder. He's like, I'm not going to marry you, but you know what? Like, you can have her as your prisoner. We're not quite sure what's going on in his head, because not only is she lunar, but she's a cyborg. And throughout this entire novel, he didn't know she was a cyborg. But as I said, being a cyborg is not a good thing. And so now he's learned all of her secrets, basically all at once. So for me, at least, I'm wondering, how much of it is an act? How much of it is actual repulsion? Like, is he putting her in jail as a ruse? Or, like, what's going on with him? And so then the book ends with Cinder being approached by Dr. Erland, and she has lost her foot. And I know that sounds really funny. It's the equivalent of her losing her shoe. But he has brought her a new foot and a new hand, and he's like, all right, I'm leaving. I'm going to Africa. Find me there. And now it's up to her to escape. And that's where we end. And that's essentially where we pick up in Scarlet. Speaking of Scarlet, I enjoy the way that Meyer drops hints, foreshadows the rest of her books, because we get a little bit of Cress, we get a little bit of Scarlet, we get a little bit of Winter, and so it's like the book could have ended and we'd be fine. But, I mean, obviously not. It's kind of a cliffhanger, because obviously Cinder now has to figure out how to escape prison and find him in Africa, because that's where Letimosis started. And then obviously the problem with Queen Lavanna is not resolved. But you could have sort of finished the book and been fine. It wasn't like she opened up all these new pathways and you were like, well, you gotta resolve that. It was just a little mention here and a little mention there. And so then, yeah, like in Scarlet, at least, because I don't even know how long it's been since I've read these books. So at least in Scarlet, I know we're picking up with Scarlet, and we get a little bit of Cinder. I don't know how much of the other characters we're actually gonna get, but that's neither here nor there. That's gonna have to wait till I get to Scarlet, which means it's tomorrow for you guys. How exciting is that? But I liked how we, just depending on what you know about the series, how familiar you are with it, you understand there's some foreshadowing, that there is more to come. But if you're not familiar with it, it's a great little surprise when you happen onto the next book and you're like, oh, this person was mentioned in Cinder, or this person was mentioned here, this person was mentioned there. I enjoy when authors drop little tidbits so that when I get into another book, I feel a little bit familiar with it. So as for Cinder, I know that I said that my only problem was kind of the whole Asian influence, like, but there is no Asian influence, and that I liked the way the book ends. But in some respects, so I knew the book was ending because I've read it before, and even though it'd been a while, I still got the sense of the pacing, and like I knew just by looking at what track I was on, what track number I was on, that I was near the end. But when I got to the end, I did sort of sit back and say, what was the point? If you look at a book structure and then you get to the end, I did say, okay, what was the overarching problem in this book that was resolved? Because Cinder's in jail. She has no resolution with Kai. There's no resolution with Queen Lavanna. There's really no resolution with her family, unless the whole idea of the book, the problem that needs to be solved, is Cinder learning who she is. And even then, you're sort of left without resolution because she has literally learned who she is, but figuratively she still has a long way to go because her identity had always been as a cyborg, as a lesser citizen, as somebody that nobody loved or cared about, and now she's the exact opposite. She's an incredibly important person to the future of the world, of the universe, since technically the moon is not on Earth. So anyways, so you end, I guess you end satisfied because Cinder is strong and Cinder's gonna figure things out, and you have confidence that things will turn out okay by the end of the series. But I did sit back and say, what was the point? What was the message trying to come across? Like, if Cinder were a standalone book, what message did it get across? What problem did it solve? Letimosis wasn't solved. Peony died, and that's something that I forgot to talk about, where, as I said, Peony had contracted letimosis. We still don't know why or how. Audrey blames it on Cinder, and you do get the feeling that Lunars can be carriers, so it is possible that Peony contracted it from Cinder, but then again, maybe she's got it from the air. We don't know where letimosis came from. All we know is that they blamed it on the Lunars. And so Cinder is getting updates as to Peony's progression. And when she meets Dr. Erlond and she learns that she is immune and that he's going to do more tests to find a cure, she secures a promise from him that Peony will get the first dose. And he says, I can't do that because obviously the Emperor Riken comes first, but then Emperor Riken dies. However, he still hasn't found a cure. And her question for him is, if you're Lunar, because eventually she figures out he's Lunar as well, she's like, if you're Lunar, why haven't you found a cure yet? And he really has no answer for her. And that's kind of something that's bothersome, but you kind of bypass it, so it's not a big problem. However, what happens is before the ball, Queen Lavanna presents Kai with just enough of a cure because her people have been working on a cure. So she presents him with just enough for a full-grown man. She's like, I think it's a little late because his dad just died. And that's one thing that makes her such a great villain, because you know she was saving it till after King Riken died. This thing progresses fast. I think within a week, Peony died. So then Cinder convinces Dr. Erlond to give her enough for Peony. She gets to the quarantine area just in time for Peony to die, which I don't quite understand. Like, I don't even know how quickly this cure would have worked, but she sits there talking to Peony for too long, in my opinion. And then she's telling Peony, oh, all you gotta do is swallow it. You know, like, I've got this for you. All you gotta do is sit up and swallow. I'm thinking, girl, lift her up yourself and pour that down her throat. I mean, I guess you do have to figure out how to get her to swallow it, but wouldn't enough get in there to start working some magic? I don't know. Again, it depends on how quickly it goes into effect. So then what happens is Peony dies and Cinder is leaving, and then she runs across the son of the woman from the market. You know, the one I told you about at the very beginning, who was telling her son to get away from Cinder's stall. And we learn that Cinder has given him the antidote. And I guess the next day he is miraculously cured. So of course now he's under observation by all the doctors. And I guess this really goes towards my lack of understanding as to how medicine works and what it takes to find a cure. But Dr. Erlond is Lunar, and then he's had Cinder under observation for a couple days and has had no progress in figuring out a cure, yet Lavanna has figured it out. Here's something of a spoiler, although I don't know if it's really a spoiler because I don't know if my memory is serving me correctly. but I think she actually manufactured the lettumosis, so maybe her people didn't actually have to figure out a cure, because you can manufacture a cure for something that you caused. Then again, I could be wrong. But yeah, so I was like, so now you have this this earthling who has been given a cure. Can you not now, with all of this medical and technological advancement, can't you pinpoint how to create a cure from these factors? Whatever. Where was I? Right. I was talking about all of the subplots that had been raised that weren't necessarily resolved. But in the grand scheme of things, guys, it doesn't mean much. It's an enjoyable book. It was a quick read. It's a good audiobook. I quite enjoyed the narrator. From the first time that I listened to her to this time that I listened to her, I thought she did a good job. Sometimes I thought she sounded like she had a stuffy nose, but I thought she did a good job. I liked how she voiced Kai. Because I don't know what it is, people. Women cannot properly narrate a man. It sounds forced and stupid when we try to do a man's voice. I mean, I know that I do my own pretend guy's voice, but that's all in jest, okay? I'm not actually trying to sound like a man. So I liked how she didn't necessarily change the way she spoke in order to sound like a man. You know, like that would sound stupid if I tried to narrate a whole book like that. So I thought she was more than tolerable. I was going to say tolerable, but she was more than tolerable. I thought she was enjoyable. And this is a book that it's a great escape. I do think that the futuristic aspect, the whole cyborg part, makes this retelling stand out more than anything else that I've read. And again, like I said, the fact that she wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel. She took the important parts and incorporated them, but it wasn't like she was trying to hit every single factor. Like, there was no obvious fairy godmother. I mean, I guess Aiko could have served as, you know, her anthropomorphic animal friends. But yeah, it wasn't like she had to pick every single item that we know from Cinderella and try to put it into a story. It would have been overwhelming and it would have felt forced. And this book, it's effortless. So I'm enjoying the series again. I'm excited that I like it. And I'm enjoying Scarlet. As to the severity of the situation with lettumosis and with what's going on with Queen Lavanna, that reminds me. I do want to talk about her. And this is nothing about the book, but it's something that got me thinking about just rulers in general. And I don't know if it's factual, but you do see it in a lot of books and movies and TV shows where you have the bad guy, or whoever you want to call them, and they get away with murder. And my thought is, how? So everybody knows that Lavanna, well, not knows, but there's a rumor as to what type of person she really is. That she might be beautiful and they might have peace on Luna, but she's actually malevolent. And she uses a glamour full time, and she's actually really ugly under the glamour, but then nobody on Earth can see her because a glamour cannot fool a television screen. And so you do get a sense of who she is. But then she comes to Earth and she does things like cast a glamour on the crowd to get them to bend to her will. Or she's having dinner with Kai and other important people, opens up her tray, you know, she lifts the lid off of her plate and she finds a mirror there. And it turns out, and we figure this out not too long after the events happen, that she orchestrated it herself, yet Kai can do nothing about it. or even when Cinder appears at the ball and Levana is trying to get her to shoot herself. Like, nobody is stepping in the way of Levana. No one's trying to stop Levana. Nobody's trying to stop her when she is making demands. And everybody knows what she's doing now. So I thought it was really interesting that, because particularly the dinner scene. So she finds the mirror and she's like, I want this servant put to death because they knew this was the wrong thing to do. And eventually Kai steps in and takes the blame. And apparently it was just a test. I guess she was trying to see how far he would go. But who is she to demand the death of one of his servants? I don't understand, and it really annoys me when that happens in books, because this is not her jurisdiction. This is not her domain. So why is she allowed to do what she does and to try to enforce things the way she does? Like, even at that dinner, she's like, these are the people who can be there, these are the people who can't, this is what we're gonna do. And I'm like, if Kai went to Luna, she wouldn't put up with that. She would not allow him to dictate the terms of anything. So why is it that when she comes to Earth, she's allowed to do that? And so she was a great villain, and this is nothing against the writing, the story, her villainy. But in general, I get tired of a bad guy who's given free reign. I know it provides tension, and that is what propels novels forward, but at the same time, it feels blown out of proportion, and then I disconnect with that. Anyways, good book. I enjoyed Cinder. I completely recommend it. I hope that I get through the rest of these books fast so that I can then just as quickly sit down and review them, and even more quickly edit them, and then do all the stuff necessary to say, hey guys, this series is up, go check it out. See you tomorrow.